Transcendental Magic, Its Doctrine and Ritual, was a book by Eliphas Levi that opened with this summation of occultism. Quote, "Behind the veil of all heretic and mystical allegories of ancient doctrines, behind the darkness and strange ordeals of all initiations, under the seal of all sacred writings, in the ruins of Nineveh or Thebes, on the crumbling stones of old temples, and on the blackened visage of the Assyrian or Egyptian Sphinx, in the monstrous or marvelous paintings which interpret to the faithful of India the inspired pages of the Vedas, in the cryptic emblems of our old books on alchemy, in the ceremonies practiced at reception by all secret societies, there are found indications of a doctrine which is everywhere the same and everywhere carefully concealed." Of course, occult means secret, and secret societies are the guardians of the ancient esoteric interpretations of what has come down to us as religions, which all too often have been misunderstood or manipulated, resulting in a tool for control and enslavement rather than for spiritual liberation and freedom. An example is the Kabbalah, which is referred to as Jewish mysticism, but in actuality predates the religion known as Judaism by many millennia, and is central to Masonic and similar organizations which hold it in high esteem. Albert Pike, quoting from Transcendental Magic, thus sums up the importance of Kabbalism as a key to Masonic esotericism. Quote, "One is filled with admiration on penetrating into the sanctuary of the Kabbalah, at seeing a doctrine so logical, so simple, and at the same time so absolute. The necessary union of ideas and signs, the consecration of most fundamental realities by the primitive characters, the trinity of words, letters, and numbers, a philosophy simple as the alphabet, profound and infinite as the word, theorems more complete and luminous than those of Pythagoras, a theology summed up by counting on one's fingers, an infinite which can be held in the hollow of an infant's hand, 10 ciphers and 22 letters, a triangle, a square, and a circle. These are all the elements of the Kabbalah. These are the elementary principles of the written word, reflection of that spoken word that created the world." From Morals and Dogma. The Order of the Eastern Star is a Masonic organization with over 500,000 members, spanning 21 countries, based on the stories of the Bible. Their teachings revolve around 5 biblical heroines: Ada, Ruth, Esther, Martha, and Electa. Each of these female characters is assigned items of symbolic value, such as a sword and veil, a sheaf of barley, a crown and scepter, a chalice, and a broken column. Each also represents a virtue, such as obedience to duty, religious principles, loyalty, endurance in trial, and endurance in persecution. Of course, these 5 characters, virtues, and colors are all expressed in their emblem of a 5-pointed star, with the white ray of the star pointing downwards. Surrounding the center pentagon in the emblem are the letters FATAL, and what they stand for is a guarded secret of the order given only to its members. There's some speculation that it stands for, quote, "fairest among thousands, altogether lovely." However, I would suggest that is only for public consumption, and the true meaning is revealed through a Kabbalistic interpretation, much in the same way that the famous G in the square and compass symbol is publicly regarded as standing for God or Grand Architect, but in esoteric context it stands for the 7th letter of the alphabet, which is of course the number 7, alluding to the days of creation, the number of celestial gods, meaning the 5 visible planets plus the sun and the moon, but in the Eastern philosophy represents the 7 chakras, and is closely tied in with tantric practices and distribution of prana, chi, or vril from the base or root chakra up into the crown, where the third eye is located, and occult vision is activated, such as clairvoyance, the faculty of perceiving things or events in the future or beyond normal sensory contact. In alchemy, perfection is symbolized by the conjunction of a square and a triangle, as it is reflected in the art of that period, such as in this 16th century drawing illustrating the alchemical meaning of the union of a square inscribed in a triangle, revealing the figures of a male and female in the center. In parts of the Middle East, as well as in Paleolithic Europe, it was understood that the number 3 symbolically stood for the masculine and appeared as a triangle, and the number 4 represented the feminine and could be symbolically portrayed as a square. Combining the 3 and 4 gives us 7, the number of perfection, indicated by a perfect circle, and the alchemical key to unlocking the inner eye.
The central point of the ceremony, the climax of our effort, is the definite admission into the order. The point at which a certain center or chakra is opened, a certain potentiality of power given. All that precedes that in the ceremony is of the nature of preparation for that point. All that follows it is in the nature of explanation of what has been done, or of exhortation as to how the power can be best developed and used.
This third eye is the true esoteric, deeper meaning behind the eye symbolism. And please notice how I said deeper esoteric meaning, as there are several valid interpretations, such as the Phoenician or Hebrew letter Ayin, whose position in the alphabet is 16, which in numerology you add the digits until it reduces to a number between 1 and 9. So 16 becomes 1 plus 6, giving us 7. In gematria, it has a numeric value of 70, which also reduces to 7. And before there was such thing as a Hebrew alphabet, in very ancient times, the pictographic representation of the Ayin resembled the image of an eye. So while Paleo-Hebrew meaning of the eye symbol is the pictograph of the eye, and not only means eye, but to see, to understand, in a Gnostic context. Paleo just means old or ancient. So when I say Paleo-Hebrew, I essentially mean Phoenician, which is a term that comes from the Greek word phoinos, meaning blood red, which can allude to the red ochre paint the ancient Mediterranean culture applied to their white skin, from the ancient Minoans 4,000 years ago to the red-painted Egyptian pharaohs, a topic I already covered in several prior videos. The Phoenician Ayin, incidentally, is the origin of the Greek and Latin or Roman O. So when you see occult-backed celebrities making circles with their fingers and placing it around their eye, they're making the letter symbol O around their eye. This pictographic writing predates the Phoenician alphabet and is the origin of the Ayin, which later became the O, which is the 15th letter of the English alphabet. And 1 plus 5 gives us 6, which is the number of points on the star known as a hexagram, and also as the Seal of Solomon, which is also representative of ancient tantric rituals, expressed by the joining of 2 opposed triangles, the famous thesis of Hermes Trismegistus, as above, so below. The triangle pointing up is an alchemical sign for fire, and the one pointing down for water, together symbolic of the principle of cosmic unity. It is for this reason that the number 6 Pythagoras connected with the planet Venus, goddess of love, intuition, divine wisdom, and gnosis. In Latin, the hexagram is actually called sexagram, and rightfully so, but its occult significance has been lost, at least publicly, especially by those who the mainstream media considers experts on the subject.
Today we're going to be giving a little bit of history and insight into the Star of David symbol. It's known in Hebrew as the Magen David, which literally means the shield of David. The truth is that the interlocking symmetrical triangle was a common symbol in the East, in the ancient world. The hexagram also was very common in Shinto belief in Japan and an astrological figure in Persia. The history of the Star of David itself, nobody's really quite sure where it originated, or how it became like such a prominent identifiable symbol with Judaism.
Most of us realize this is one of the most widely recognized symbols in all of Jewish culture. And what we want to look at tonight is the origins of such a symbol and where it might come from. Unfortunately, there isn't any real direct reference to the Jewish star or the Magen David in any of our biblical literature or Talmudic literature, even in our Kabbalistic and Midrashic literature. And even the famous Jewish philosopher and academic Gershom Scholem, who passed away in 1982, was a scholar who insisted that the Magen David was not a Jewish symbol at all. And he refused to accept the idea that there was any connection between the Star of David, the Magen David, and Judaism to speak of.
The chief architect of the Temple of Solomon in the Old Testament was Hiram Abiff in 966 BC, which is an integral part of Freemasonry, providing everything from the layout of the lodge room with its pillars to the rituals and foundation of the higher degrees. That said, Hiram Abiff was a Phoenician from the city of Tyre, a Phoenician city. Well, his father was from Tyre, and his mother from a Hebrew tribe of Naphtali, occupying what is now northern Israel beside the Sea of Galilee. This is also near Baalbek, the ancient Phoenician city located in what is now modern-day Lebanon, named after Baal, the Phoenician deity, which literally translates into Lord, but in this context describes the bearded god holding a thunderbolt, sometimes called Hadad in Canaanite and Mesopotamian religions. In Greek and Roman times, Baalbek was also known as Heliopolis, which is Greek for sun city. So whenever you hear about this thunder god, which went by many names, Hadad, Indra, Jupiter, Zeus, Thor, Marduk, or in Egypt he was Amun, keep in mind that he's extremely close to the sun god. And while this may get a little bit confusing for some, is almost interchangeable with the sun. So for example, in Egypt we have Amun-Ra, where Ra is the sun and Amun is Jupiter, but they combine them into one. But in most cases, they are father and son. And this is true of all solar religions and by extension, all major world religions. While some historians argue that the ancient Indo-European people worshipped the various names given to planets such as Mars, Venus, Jupiter, or Saturn, in actuality, they all represented the same universal light, and the individual cults and temples dedicated to certain planets corresponded to certain aspects of deeper religious philosophies, which are in modern times called the mysteries, and are no longer practiced in the open, but still survive in what is regarded as the occult. While the term occult sometimes brings up negative reaction in people that subscribe to modern Abrahamic religions, it simply implies hidden or secret, and whose understanding can help illuminate historical facts associated with the suppressed origins of those same religions. According to the New Testament, in the waning moments of his life, Jesus cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" In the Gospel of Mark, those were Jesus' final words. This cry of dissolution, as it is known, is theologically difficult for some to manage. But at the Turin National Library, near where the Shroud of Turin is kept, one important ancient copy of Mark has a different take entirely. In the oldest surviving Latin Gospel, Jesus seems to call out to the sun god Helios instead. Though some manuscripts are ornate or difficult to read, the book in question, called the Codex Bobiensis, is refreshingly clear. The letters are even and is straightforward to follow. Some date the version of the Gospels in the book as early as the 3rd century, and given that there are no 1st century manuscripts of the New Testament, and there are only a few fragments that have survived from the 2nd, it is a very important text and earlier than the majority of Greek manuscripts. So this early manuscript describes those instances in the life of Jesus where the copyist has substituted the name of pagan deities, Helion, which is the solar deity, or sometimes Saturn, and Jove, which is Zeus or Jupiter, instead of the words for Eloi, which is the Aramaic for my God, and the word sheep. In an astrotheological context, the planet Saturn, which we have already established is interchangeable with Helios and considered the star of the sun, is mythologically the father of Zeus or Jupiter. And I invite anyone to fact check this on their own. Once this is understood, it should help broaden the oversimplistic notion that Jews are Saturn worshippers, as opposed to Aryans who are considered sun worshippers, as there's no difference, and Saturn is the star of the sun. My point is that the Jews were not some small, remote, desert tribe with a unique religion that got lucky and grew powerful through banking and usury, but are part of the same ancient religious mystery schools spread globally which dominated the Holocene, and has been aberrated and historically misunderstood in modern times. Keep in mind that before being converted to Christianity, European Christians were called something, and the word pagan is simply a term first used in the 4th century by early Christians for people in the Roman Empire who practiced polytheism. Thor is associated with the planet Jupiter in Germanic paganism, and is often depicted with or near a swastika symbol, which was also a solar symbol revered by the Vikings and all Indo-Europeans, regardless of the names which have changed. The astrotheological reason for this close relationship is that at night, when the sun goes down, it is Jupiter that traverses the path of the ecliptic over a 12-year cycle, passing the 12 houses of the zodiac over its 12-year orbit around the sun, which is why the zodiac is divided into 12, why there are 12 months, 12 astrological ages to Plato's great year, which is a 25,900-year cycle, why there are 12 tribes of Israel, 12 labors of Hercules, 12 knights of the Round Table, 12 sons of Jacob, 12 apostles to Christ, 12 cards of the tarot, 12 days of Christmas, 12 Olympian gods, 12 stars on the European flag, 12 inches in a foot, and why there are 12 arms that resemble thunderbolts that emanate from the black sun swastika symbol. Of course, there are actually 12 Germanic runic symbols which stand for the sun, which comes down to us in Etruscan and then Latin as the letter S, whose deeper esoteric significance will require a video all to itself. That said, it is in the city of Baalbek that we find the Temple of Jupiter, as well as swastika symbols associated with the solar cults, for example on this Phoenician artifact, as well as the Seal of Solomon. In fact, we see these two symbols together in many places around the world, something not taught anymore in post-World War II universities, but very visible in places like Lalibela, Ethiopia, where swastikas are carved right into the stone churches and hexagram stars are also to be found inside, or in places like India on temples of worship, or on this ancient mosaic from Paphos on the Mediterranean island of Cyprus, which was also part of ancient Phoenicia. Of course, these two ancient symbols also appear together on certain coins, which is a very little known fact due to the corruption and propaganda following World War II, which has nearly totally hidden the ancient ties between Europe and the Middle East, or Levant. To start with, Europe is named after Europa, a Phoenician princess. Phoenicia means the Eastern Mediterranean, specifically Tyre, which is part of modern Lebanon. Many Northern European and Germanic people can trace their ancestry back to the Middle East and what many call the Holy Land. One needs only to look at the history of the Crusades, in which the Knights Templar, who were comprised of Germanic people that invaded Palestine to retake Jerusalem, leaving behind symbols which today flies on the modern Israeli flag. The Knights Templar are directly linked to the ancient Phoenician nobility, whose ancient empire spanned from Egyptian dynasties in the Mediterranean to now extinct tribes of the New World. Of course, these pious Germanic nobility were also linked to the German nationalists who were responsible for physically populating and establishing what has eventually become modern-day Israel, which is one of the biggest kept secrets of the modern age. The Temple Society is a German Protestant sect with roots in the Pietist movement of the Lutheran Church. Pietism is a movement that combines biblical doctrine with a Reformed emphasis on individual piety. In spiritual terminology, piety is a virtue which may include religious devotion, spirituality, and humility, which originated in Germany in the late 17th century. Their members refer to themselves as Templars. Although the movement started exclusively within Lutheranism, it had a tremendous impact on Protestantism worldwide, spreading first to Switzerland, Scandinavia, and the Baltics, and the rest of Europe, then taken to North America, primarily by German and Scandinavian immigrants. There, it influenced Protestants of other ethnic backgrounds, contributing to the 18th century foundation of evangelicalism, a movement within Protestantism that today has some 300 million followers. The Templars were expelled from the Lutheran Church in 1858 because of their millennial beliefs. Millennialism is a word that comes from the Latin millenniaris, which means containing 1,000, and is the belief of a coming transformation of society after which all things will be changed, usually coming about after major cataclysms or other apocalyptical events. The word Templar is derived from concepts in the Bible, where every person and the community are seen as temples in which God's Spirit dwells. The Temple Society was founded by two men, Christoph Hoffmann, who was chairman of a German congregation of the Moravian Church, also called the Unitas Fratrum, Latin for Unity of the Brethren, one of the oldest Protestant denominations in the world, dating back to the Bohemian Reformation of the 15th century, founded in the Kingdom of Bohemia. The other was George David Hardegg, who in 1868 purchased land at the foot of Mount Carmel, a coastal mountain range in northern Israel stretching from the Mediterranean Sea towards the southeast, where Israel's third largest city, called Haifa, is located. At the time, Haifa had a population of 4,000 Arabs, and the Templars are credited today with the development of the city, with religious colonies spreading congregations to Jaffa, Jerusalem, and Sarona, where they established a regular coach service between Haifa and other cities, promoting tourism, making important contributions to road construction, and establishing a lot of agriculture. For example, the colony's oranges were the first to carry the Jaffa orange brand, one of the better known agricultural brands in Europe, used to market Israeli oranges to this day. Their aim was to promote spiritual cooperation to advance the rebuilding of the temple in the Holy Land, then called Palestine, in the belief that this foundation will promote the second coming of Christ. In 1898, Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany visited the colonies and initiated the formation of a society for the advancement of the German settlements in Palestine, enabling the settlers to acquire land for new settlements by offering them low-interest loans. Waves of pioneer settlers followed in 1902, 1903, 1906, and 1907, with Templar communities in what was then called Palestine, now numbering in the thousands. The houses they built can still be seen in Haifa and on part of what is now called Ben Gurion Boulevard. There's been a growing interest in Israel about these German settlers, and an exhibition about them was organized in Tel Aviv back in 2006, where they are acknowledged as being the first to develop the land in modern times, and the government recognizes the contributions they made to things like early infrastructure. Fast forward to World War I and the events associated with it, such as the Balfour Declaration, and if you're not familiar with that, I've included a link in the description to a video I did on the subject. When the British Army conquered the Holy Land at the end of 1917, matters started to change for the German Templars. In July and August of 1918, the British sent almost 1,000 Templars to an internment camp near Cairo in Egypt. In April 1920, most were deported to Germany. All the property of the Templars of enemy nationality, meaning Germans, was taken into public custodianship. With the establishment of a regular British administration in 1918, Templar property and livestock was seized, labeled as enemy property, and rented out with profits collected by the British. In April 1920, the Allies convened at the Conference of San Remo, agreeing on the British rule in Palestine. Fast forward to 1933 and the rise of the Nationalist Socialist government in Germany. Many of the Templars that weren't deported officially joined the Nationalist German Party, who opened a branch in Haifa in 1934, followed by another one in Jaffa. At the time, it was not uncommon to see a Nationalist Socialist parade in the streets of Tel Aviv, with flags and uniforms in full regalia. This image was from Jerusalem, and you can see the flags for yourself out in the open. Here's an article from 1938, which was published in the 6th year of the transfer agreement, where German Jews voluntarily went to transfer camps from 1933 to 1939 and were not only given a ride to the Holy Land on German ships. Once they arrived, they were given back a large portion of their assets, whether it be money or things like real estate, with another portion of it going to Jewish organizations which used it for various common goods and services. You can find out more about it online, such as articles called Transfer Agreement on Wikipedia, or Jewish websites where it's called the Havara Agreement. 100% available mainstream knowledge, even if it's ignored 100% by Hollywood and the controlled corporate media. The German camps were established to send people and their assets to Palestine by the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, something overlooked and left out by people like Steven Spielberg, but nonetheless part of history and factual reality.
Live on Channel 5, this is the 10 o'clock news with Deborah Norville.
Coming out revealing secret negotiation between the Nazis and the Zionists in 1933, which allowed German Jews and their assets to go to Palestine.
American Jews marched calling for the boycott of all German exports. Jews throughout Europe echoed that call, so did Jews everywhere. But a group of Zionists at the same time was quietly negotiating an agreement with the Nazis to allow the immigration of German Jews and the transfer of their assets to Palestine. That deal, reported in August 1933, was the transfer agreement. Palestine, sparsely settled by Jews at the time, was radically changed as a result.
I lived in Palestine from 1933 to 1936, and we saw every week transports of German Jews coming to settle in Palestine.
German Jewish settlement of Palestine was, for a time, official Nazi policy. These photos of Jewish life in Palestine, along with a lengthy text, appeared in 1934 in the Berlin paper Der Angriff. A Nazi Visits Palestine was the title of the multi-part series. A medal was struck by Goebbels in commemoration. On one side, the swastika. On the other, the Star of David.
That said, the relations deteriorated between the German Templars that spent decades building the community there and other migrants that were in political alignment with the British, some of whom emigrated from places like Russia in alignment with Russian Bolsheviks, who were the Marxist origins of the communist revolution that killed tens of millions and then became the Soviet Union. The British ran what is now Israel from the end of the First World War, and by the time of the Second World War, decided that after nearly a century in Haifa, the German Templars needed to be kicked out, deporting them en masse to Germany. Many of the children of the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of Yiddish-speaking Germans who populated Palestine from 33 to 39 are unaware of this history and are also taught propaganda in their schools. Yiddish, by the way, is one of the dialects of Alemannic Germany that belongs to the High German group, like Swabian, from the region of Bavaria. For those familiar with my work, the term Swabia will sound familiar, as in New Swabia or Neuschwabenland, an area of Antarctica named by nationalist Germany, which is allegedly the location of a submarine base which became the central command of a Germanic breakaway civilization following World War II, which I've covered extensively in videos about Operation High Jump, when Allied forces were allegedly defeated by them in 1946 and 47. But that's another story which I'll touch on again later at another time. For now, I'd like to thank you for listening and to invite you to check out my published work available through any book outlet, including Amazon. Species with Amnesia, Our Forgotten History. Gods with Amnesia, Subterranean Worlds of Inner Earth. The Occult Secrets of Vril. And 1666, Redemption Through Sin. If you'd like to support my work, you could do that through patreon.com. There should be a link in the description section for those that are interested. I appreciate it. Thank you. As always, I look forward to reading your comments, so please leave me your thoughts below. Please have a wonderful weekend, and I hope to see you again soon.